Well, hi, welcome to Chapter 11. Chapter 11, we're going to get into web forms. Now, we're just going to get into the basics of web forms, how to create forms, the actual programming that basically goes on behind it. We're going to need JavaScript and or PHP code or some other things, which this particular course does not get into. There's another course that will get into more of that. So we're just going to create basic forms. So when we get to this chapter, it says we're going to understand how a form works. We're going to use the form tag element. We're going to create input objects. We're going to style these forms with these different CSS styles, and we are going to actually build a form. So first part of the chapter says is how does a form basically work. So if we look at this example here on the screen, we can see that we have some text boxes for first name and last name. We have check boxes. Check boxes allow us to check more than one box. We can check one, none, or all. We can actually have a drop-down list that we can select items with. We also have what's called a text area. This is a text box, this is a text area. Notice the difference. A text area has multiple lines that we can type in. We have radio buttons, and then we have what are called submit buttons, actual buttons that will do things and execute different parts of that particular form. So first thing we have to talk about is a CGI, which is a common gateway interface, and this is basically the common code basically that allows HTML pages to talk to one another through this CGI. Again, I talked about JavaScript or some type of script allows us to do more with these particular forms that, again, we're not going to get into in this particular, because that's like an entire half a semester in itself. We also have this new thing called Ajax, and what it allows us to do is kind of do things that's called multi-threading. You can actually have multiple pieces of code running at the same time. For example, when you go to Google today and you start typing in your search and it starts popping up stuff as you're typing the text, that's Ajax, because what you're typing in is one thread and then this other thread is running in the background throwing up suggestions of what you're looking for. So we use the form element, and we're going to have some different attributes we're going to use. We're going to have our action attribute. We have an I don't know what that's for. Basically, it's the ENC type. The method. We're going to talk a lot about get and post. What's the difference? Accept and accept a char set. So the form element by itself does not create a form. It must contain form controls such as input, text boxes, all that sort of thing, and buttons. So this is pretty much the basis of a form right here. So I create a form tag. The method is post. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then we have an action. What's the action? So when we click the submit part of this particular form, what is it going to do? In this case, it's going to go to another website. So we talked about get or post. The difference between get and post is the way the data is sent to the server. Okay, so realize your code is running on a server, so we need to get this code to that server. This method sends a form information, including it in the URL. So if you use a get method get, not only is it going to send that data to the server, but it's also going to display it up in the URL. So if you're trying to submit passwords and that type of thing, you probably don't want to use a get because it will display in the URL. A post, on the other hand, just sends it to the server without displaying it in the URL. This method sends a form securely to the server within the message body so the data is not visible. So if you need it more secure, use the post. We can also use a mail to action. So if I wanted to email somebody, I can type mail to : in my my anchor href tag, or in this case the form, and I put an email address behind that. It would automatically send that email using your default email program that you have. So here, and they're going to use the post, so we don't want to have that email address kind of displaying on the screen. So that's kind of the basis of the beginning of a form. What we put inside the form now is basically what we need to kind of talk about. So we have this creating input objects. So there's a lot of different input objects we can utilize. We have a text and password are identical, but we'll see that using a password as a text box is a lot different. It will actually mask what you're typing in with asterisks so that people can't see over somebody's shoulder typing in a password. Checkboxes, radio buttons, a submit button, a reset button, a hidden input, image, or button. So if I need to get, so kind of what we're doing with forms is we're taking this input data and we're sending it to another website or another web page. Well, sometimes I need to send data to another web page that I do not want visible. So I hide it behind the scenes. It's still passing that data, but it's not seen on the surface by the user. We can also send a file as well. We also have a button. We have labeling form elements using the label tag. So that's what this is right here. This first name is a label. So I would basically do something as label, and if we use some kind of a class for our CSS, first name and ending label, and input text first name. So what is this going to look like? So if we look at this particular web page right here, I can see I've got your address information. I've got street, city, state, zip, and I've got some text boxes behind them. So if I look at the page source, we can see that I've got a style here called label, and I've got a width and a whole bunch of other formatting stuff for a label. And again, this is just for a label. It automatically applies to a label. So I've got a form action. It's got nothing right now because it's not going anywhere. It's more of a demo. And the method is post, meaning it's not going to take into the data we send and put it into the URL and let that information be visible. So I've just got a p tag here, your information, and I got another p tag, and here's the label, 4 equals street, and then I got street. So and what this for street means is this label is for, if we go over here and look, here's input, type text, name, street. So it says this label is for this input item. Okay, so whenever you see the word for, it's saying, hey, I want to make sure that this label goes with this input item. So I've got a label. It's going to say street. I got an ending label. I've got a beginning input. Type is text. That says what are we going to display? Is it text? Is it radio? Is it late? So those are the different input types. I've got to give it a name. So it has to have a name so it knows what it needs to do. Then I have a size. I can make that textbook. It's just got a basic default size, but then I can make it longer or narrower as I need. Max length, I want nothing wider than 35 characters. The ID, so if we utilize this within another form, we can use this ID tag to pass information. So we see we have that for our street, city, state, and zip. Notice I got 20 and 20 for the first and last name. I've got a size of 2 for state. Don't need a very big text box for that. Zip is a size 10. So that's why we see these different size text boxes here. And notice I got a P tag in front of each line, so it automatically goes into a new paragraph. So pretty cool stuff. So it basically really allows us to get that out there and then utilize that information, passing it along to other parts of a web page. Here we've got check boxes. We'll see those here in a minute. So it says creating a text box. So here we are. It says tell us who you are. So I basically just covered all that. Okay. We can create a checkbox. So let's take a look at a checkbox. So here I've got select your favorite ice cream flavor, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, and coffee. So you can check these or uncheck these. And if we take a look at the code, we can see that we do not have any style, but we've got our form action basically is doing nothing at this point. Method post, select your favorite ice cream flavor, which is a P. I got input type checkbox now. I've got a name, so I give this checkbox a name. Its value is chocolate, and then I've got a label for chalk because this is chalk. That's the name of this guy, and it goes on from there. Okay. So pretty not too bad. I mean, it's pretty simple. So input type checkbooks, give it a name, give it a value, I give it an ID, and then I give it a label behind there, and basically go on from there. And I simply have a checkbox. Okay. So again, here is the bass, and again we kind of covered all that. So here's our beginning UL for our unordered list, and we got a list item for each one, and it basically then looks like that. We can create radio buttons. Radio buttons and checkboxes are pretty much the same. We have, so let's take a look at it. So here, do you want to learn more about our offer? Yes or no. Now you'll notice that radio buttons, unlike checkboxes, only one can be selected. We take a look at the code, and I can see that we have input type radio, name offer, value yes. Now notice I've got this checked parameter. That basically is our default check. If I were to take that off, I would have two radio buttons and none of them would be checked. So I can do the same thing with a checkbox as well. I can actually say one of them is checked by default. And then I have labels. So let me just show you real quick how we can do that. So here's that checkbox, and if I were to come in here and say checked and save it, and then basically look at it again, here is, let me open it. So here, notice that chocolate is pre-checked. Just by putting checked in there, it's pre-checked. Can I do that on multiples? Yes, I can. I can't do it on multiples for radio buttons, though, because again, radio buttons can only have one button checked at a time, but I can do that with checkboxes. So here's label for yes, yes, label, and then the input, no. So again, we have our coordinating labels that go with each one of our checkboxes and or text boxes or radio buttons. So now we have our data. Now let's talk about our select buttons. So I want to be able to select a button. So here in this case it says briefly tell us about your favorite fish story. Enter your story here. Would you like to be on our mailing list? Yes or no. Submit your answers or clear the form. So very easily we just type input type submit. That automatically creates a button, and then we can say value submit your answers. Whatever's in this value tag is going to appear on the button itself. Then we have a type reset that automatically clears all of the check boxes, all of the text boxes, text areas, and then basically resets the radio buttons back to their default. To do that, we just have to do this sort of thing. So let me, oh, that's a select item. No, that's not it. Okay. So this is basically, again, a submit button. So if I were to type some text in here and here and here, when I click clear, it automatically clears everything in that form. So there's no extra specific coding we have to do for a reset button. We just say type reset. When it's selected, it automatically does its job. Pretty cool. We can actually have let us select a file. I can type a name in there, and I've got browse, and then that browse button is going to have some code behind it to actually open up a path on your computer to allow you to get to something. So use the browse button to select your file, input type file. That would be a file, and then size 30. So let me see if I can grab that. And let me take it into here. Yeah. Frustrating. Come on, work. It's not gonna let me. Gonna be a pain in the butt. So I will type in so I just typed that in. Let's see what that's going to look like. So look at my checkbox, and I now have choose file. I click on it. I then can select a file, and now it shows a file selected. So it does all that for you. Pretty cool. So it looks like a button. Lets me open it up and then select a file. So pretty easy stuff. Now let's say I'm going to go back to my text box, and let me go into edit on that guy. And instead of, I'm going to basically duplicate this line right here. And is it password? It is password, okay. Sometimes they're abbreviated. So, did I close it? I must have. So let me save it, and then we bring it back up. Refresh it. Now I've got passwords. So here I can put in text. Okay. Here I type in text. Notice a bunch of dots show up because again it says this is a password input type, which is a text box, but I'm going to mask what is typed so people can't be looking over your shoulder and basically seeing what your password is. The select element is a neat one. What it allows us to do is click on a drop down and select an item, and it will basically put it in that box. If we look at the source, we can see that we have a form, method post, says choose your favorite ice cream flavor, select name flavors. So this is the name of what is going to be selected. So whatever is selected gets put into flavors. And then so they've got an option for each one of those. As I went in my drop down, it's going to basically be in an option. Here's the value of chocolate. So whatever gets selected, so if I selected strawberry, straw will be thrown into flavors. So I'm always going to pass flavors onto whatever form or process is going to utilize this. So just think as flavors as kind of a data holder, and whatever we select down here will be put into flavors. We can make something scrollable. So if I said select name snacks, multiple size 6, let me do that real quick. Let me go into the edit of that guy, and I'm going to say that so I'm going to say I always forget what I'm going to do. So multiple size equals 6. So multiple size, I'm going to say 3 in this case, and save it. And now when I look at this guy, let me refresh. When I click on this, now notice that I've lost a drop down capability, because now it's just a scroll box that I can scroll back and forth and then basically do my selection. Okay. So when I basically use the multiple size, it takes away the drop down capability and just makes it a scrollable box. Now sometimes, okay, if we think about radio buttons, if I'm going to have different sets of radio buttons, if I have all those radio buttons sitting in the same place, let's say I've got sex, male, female. Let's say I have you know, are you a registered voter, or you know, are you employed here? You've got all these different sets of radio buttons. If they're all sitting just on that form, they're all related. If I try to click sex and then yes, I'm also a registered voter, it's going to take that bullet point away from there. So what I need to do is group my radio buttons together. I can also group other things, but the main thing I want to get a point across is make sure we always group our radio buttons. So we have this thing called the grouping list option. And so what I will do is do op group label salty snacks, op group label hot snacks, and well, actually what it will do is put a well, let's just see. Let me let me do this. Well, let's just take a look at this guy. So notice it puts this group thing around there. That's something else, by the way. Let's see what I can do here. So opt group label, opt group label. So I can do this. Just like just like all tags, we have to have a way to close them out. This has a closing tag. Again, not all tags have closing tags, but in this case it does. And notice I didn't include the password as part of that group. I wanted just employee information as a grouping by itself and nothing else. So let me save that and see if it actually changes the... That didn't work, did it? OPT group. OPT group. I thought I had that. OPT group label. Maybe it only works for selectable items. I believe it does. That's probably where I'm going wrong here. So let me X that guy out of there. because I'm getting confused with there's a way to put a box around things. I thought that's what the op group does, but obviously it doesn't. So let me go into the select area. So here we are. So let me do this. And that's making me upset. Opt group. Oh, I got to put it inside the select. Okay. Okay. So now if I wanted, let's say, another set of options, and save it. There you go. So now, yeah, let me get rid of that. Yeah, this multi-line, multi-size. And now, so notice I've got it grouped into categories now. So I've got, here's one category and here's a second category. The op groups just become labels at that point. They do not become selectable. Okay. Confuse the instructor on that one. Okay. So text area. So we've seen text boxes. That's just for one line of text. But if I need a lot more lines of text, I'm going to need what's called a text area. And so the way I use it is pretty much the same exact way, except I'm going to say text area, give it a name, and how many rows and how many columns I'm going to basically utilize. So this is basically what a text area is going to look like. So right here, basically it's got write a paragraph, describes your interest. My interests are, and if I look at the source, there I've got a P text area, name, interest, how many rows, how many columns, and then my interests are, and then the ending text area. Now, you need to make sure you type over there where it says my interests are. Yeah, because that will stay if you do not type over it. Now, here's what I was thinking about. Here's the groupings I was thinking about. So we can use this thing called field sets and legends to basically group items together via boxes. And we do that with field set, legend, ending legend, and then an ending field set at the end. Okay? So if we look at this guy right here, I've got this contact information. If I look at the page source, notice I've got field set. Here's the legend, contact information. So the legend is the text that's going to display on the line of that box. Then I've got an ending legend. So legend, boom, legend. So that says make sure you put this text on that line of the box that goes around. And here's my ending field set. So field set is the box that goes around it. The legend is the text that goes on the box. If I were to take this legend out, it would just have a box. That's all it would do. That's all the field set does, is it boxes it. This is what you want. This is the grouping you want to do around your radio buttons. Make sure you do this around your radio buttons to keep them separate from other groups of radio buttons. So field set draws the box. The legend puts the text on the box. So we can see we got field set for the contact information and ending field set. So again, there's contact information, there's the box goes around it, select your other areas of interest, select your areas of interest, and then basically we've got a selectable box and a radio button, and then submit. Okay, so styling forms of CSS. We can change the background color of our CS of our form. I can say yeah. I think we just do. Oh yeah. We can change the background color, but notice that these labels these text boxes do not line up. What we can then do is we can actually make sure that they all line up. But notice that the labels are right aligned, and then the text boxes align up to those guys. So how do we do that? I would say label for name, input type, text name, ID type, ID name. So what we would do in our CSS is we would say label float left width 6 ems. Okay. And that would basically do that. And it makes, so what that does is that makes the label itself float to the left, and they're always going to be 6 ems wide. So notice that this name takes up 6 ems. Company, street, they're all the same width. They're all going to take up the same space. We could say text to line right at that point and then have a margin. I could have a submit, a class called submit, margin left 8 ems, and then here's my P class submit for my buttons at the bottom. So let's try that. So here's my text boxes. Okay, so let me put a style up there. Oh, so there's label width. Okay, so it's already doing that. So it's got so it's got float left. So let's do this. Let's do, and it's got text align right. And so again, if we look at this guy, notice that the name, email, and phone are basically right aligned. Do they have a specific width? Yep, they have a specific width of 60 pixels. So each label is going to be 60 pixels. No matter if you use it or not, it says I'm going to take up 60 pixels. Text align right. The text boxes then line up against with those labels, and it basically is a good looking form. With the wrong one. So if we were to do this, if I were to have a dot submit, margin left 8 ems, and then I came down here and I put Again, value is what is going to appear on the button itself. I just do submit. Trying to get fancy. I'll put a P tag in front of this. Oh, already got a P tag, sorry. I want to do a B. No, we'll keep them in line. And then okay, so save it. Notice I've added the style submit to those buttons, and refresh. There's my password. There's my submit. Notice that it's over 8 M's now. So if I were to change that to, let's change it to 4 M's. Notice it basically shifted over to the left because now it's only 4 M margin as opposed to an 8 M margin. Okay, so now when I click submit, what is going to execute? Whatever is in this form action, that's what's going to execute. So if I were to put and I save it. So if I type let me do a refresh. Type some information in, click submit, look what it does. It takes us to Mid-State College. Okay. Now, the wild thing is we've just passed all that data we typed in this box to this website. Okay. Let me change that to a get and let's see what happens. Change it from a post to a get. Let me save it. Let me come over here and do a refresh. Again, let me type some data in here. I click submit. And if we look up here in the URL, it says Midstate EDU, question mark, street that, city that, state that, zip that, password that. So notice that it basically took all that data we typed in to basically pass on to another form. It's all up there in the URL. So sometimes we need to do that in order to make sure that we properly get the data over there. But if it's secure data, we want to make sure that we basically use a post as opposed to a get in order to basically get that. Okay, so that's the difference between a post and a get. Yeah, so they're showing that the label is right aligned. It's basically how many width it is. So styling field sets and legend elements. We could basically come in here and say field width has a width of 24 M's. Has a background color of that and a border of that. And it will basically have a back. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and add a background color to the field set. So I come in here and say, let's go ahead and make it 20 M's. We'll add a background color. We'll use the same color they're using. And a border that is solid. It's a medium width, and has a color of whatever color that is, 053972, and we end it and we save it and we do a refresh. Oh, did I wrong box? What did I just change? Text box finished. Okay. You know what? I don't have a field set in there. So let me do that real quick. Let me add a field set. So again, you don't always have to have a legend, but I would suggest you do. In fact, let me just do this. I'm going to change this to a legend. And then at the end, before the submit button, I will end my field set. And save it and refresh, and there it is. So your address information is now a field set with a blue background, and it's got a dark blue border around it. It's pretty slick, really a neat way to set up an address. Again, if I didn't do a width, it would actually have that box up against those text boxes there, depending on what kind of a margin or padding we had. Oh, and I could do the same. See, I could do the same thing with the legend as well. I could go ahead and add a legend style. Let's see, a border, solid, 1 pixel, and a background color of 05. I get the same exact color, 3972. A background color I'm going to change it to light gray. And a padding of 2 pixels. And let's save it and come over here, refresh, and now we have a box going around that guy. And apparently my background color is not incorrect. But anyways, we can actually put a border around the label, the legend itself as well. So we can really style this thing up. We can also add a background image. So here we have this background image that goes from light green to dark green. We can put that in the background. We just say background-image, put the URL, how we want it positioned, and how we want it repeated, just like we did in the previous chapter. I think it was 2 chapters ago or 1 chapter ago. Allowed us to basically put a background image, and we can basically have it repeat. We can where we want it positioned, on the bottom, the top, left, right, so on and so forth. So activity is we build this form. You're going to actually build this form right here, this job under job software online job search. Again, we type some stuff. We basically put some check marks. We basically put the selection. Now notice that neither one of those radio buttons were checked. That's because that checked property was not set. I click submit and boom. Well, let's see where that guy is going to. What happens when we click the submit button? So where is my form? So form, enter URL here. Okay, so there is a, it went to enter URL here, wherever that is. So which is nowhere, so that's why it basically got that error page. And again, when it goes to that URL, it's passing that data to it. And then we can actually capture that data and basically get it as well. So talked about earlier about how we get data from one to the other. So now we have taken and created a form, we've gathered some data, we've passed it on to the next form. Well, how do we get that data? Well, again, this is where it comes into the JavaScript or the PHP code. So if you go out here to and just I did a search on getting data from a form in HTML, and it basically, probably the best way to do it is through this thing called PHP. Now, if you use PHP, your file can no longer have a .html extension. It has to have a .php extension. And what you would do is this. So here is the form, and here's where it's basically going to. So let me just do this real quick. So let me create a new page, and I'm going to save this page as, I'll just call it receiver.php. I'm going to save it in this chapter 11 folder so that we can basically get to it. And I'm just going to create a generic HTML, and here's my body, and here is hi. I'm just going to say hi. Now, PHP code can basically be anywhere in the text, but we have to tell it we're using PHP code. If I type in a less than symbol, a question mark, that says I'm beginning PHP code. And then I'm going to say echo, which means say just display, and I need to say how am I receiving this? Am I getting it through a get or a post? Well, I'm getting it through a post, so I basically put $_ uppercase POST, and then a left square bracket, and I'm going, let me see how did we get that? We are sending it as name, right? Yeah, we're calling it name. So we're going to receive it as name. So I'm just going to say, let me get back to my page. So I'm going to receive it as double quote name, double quote, ending that. I have to tell I'm done with that line in PHP. I then put an ending question mark, greater than symbol. It says I'm done with PHP at that point. I'm then going to end my body, end my HTML, and then basically save it, and it's saved as receiver.php. Then I go back over here to this guy, and I'm going to change this to receiver.php. Okay? So, save it, come back over here, I do a refresh, I'm going to type in my name, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and click submit. Notice it said hi, and it did not get my name. Why did it not get my name? It should have. I am name. Did I change it to get? I think I might have. Yeah. No, it's a post. I'm going to change it to get and see what happens. So I've got my name up here, Mark Webb, and mid-state my email address. Why is it not picking it up? Anyways, let me kind of look on that and have to kind of see what is going on there. I just remembered, in order to run PHP code, it has to be on a server. Okay, so let me try this. I'm going to go to I'm actually going to put this out there on the student folder. Okay, so I went ahead and logged in, and I've got my 2 files over here, and let's see if it works now. So I'm going to go to the student drive, go here, go to mweb. I'm going to open this WonderForm finished. I type in I click submit, cross my fingers, and because I have it as get. Gosh darn it. Let me change that back to post. And let me go back over here and let me go back. Let me do a refresh. Let me type in my name again. No, don't do that. I click submit, and there is welcome Mark Webb. Your email address is boom. So basically it works. Okay, so again, PHP code has to run on a server, not just locally on your system in order for it to work. Okay, so please go through this activity. The form HTML is out there. Make sure you rename it as WonderForm. Go ahead and go through this. You'll learn a lot because you're going to basically do this step by step by step by step. Again, any questions, give me a call. We'll basically see if we can work it out. We'll see you next chapter. 1 chapter left, by the way.